Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We often talk about how hazy laws can seem, and then once in a while there's something in a law that's a bright line. And it's always interesting to me when people assume everything in the law is confusing and hazy and gray areas, and it's not. So it should come as no surprise then that this happened. Nathan sent me the story out of thehill.com. Florida Supreme Court blocks DeSantis justice pick. DeSantis, of course, is the governor of Florida. He nominated somebody for the Florida Supreme Court, and that person didn't meet the qualifications. And so the nomination got struck down. And it's an interesting thing because the Florida Supreme Court blocked Governor Ron DeSantis' pick to join the court and said he must select a new nominee because the woman he chose to fill the vacancy is constitutionally ineligible to serve. So the Florida Constitution specifically says something. The court issued a Friday ruling nullifying the appointment of Judge Renatha Francis because she fell short of the 10-year mandate for someone to be admitted to the Florida bar before they are eligible for a position on the high court. So the Florida Constitution says to be on our Supreme Court, one must have been a member of the Florida bar for 10 years or more. She was admitted to the Florida bar on September 24th, 2010, making her tenure with the state bar several months short of the admittance requirement for the Florida Supreme Court under state law. Now, while her nomination was a win for black lawmakers who had pressed DeSantis to add an African American to the bench, critics pointed to the timing of her pick to say she should not be permitted on the court. The Constitution's 10-year bar membership requirement and 60-day appointment deadline are bright-line textual mandates that impose rules rather than standards and prioritize certainty over discretion, the court ruled. So you can't say, well, it's close. It's close. No. If it says 10 years, it's 10 years. We hold that the Constitution requires the governor immediately to appoint and commission a constitutionally eligible nominee from among the 7 remaining candidates already certified by the Judicial Nominating Commission. The whole process here. So DeSantis now has a couple days to appoint another judge to fill the vacancy that would have gone to Francis. The spot first opened up with the retirement of a justice named Robert Luck. Governors in Florida are mandated to fill Supreme Court vacancies from a list given to them by the Supreme Court Judicial Nominating Commission, meaning DeSantis will have his picks narrowed to those from the original list that was provided to him earlier this year before Francis's nomination hit its roadblocks. The effort to block her from joining the court was brought by State Representative Geraldine Thompson, who had initially requested a new list be crafted for DeSantis, but amended her petition to fit the court's ruling from 2 weeks ago that first determined that the governor overstepped his authority in appointing her in the first place. My motivation was to protect the independence, the autonomy, and the confidence that people have in our judiciary, she told the Associated Press. I put my hand on the Bible and raised my hand to God, and I said I would protect and defend the Constitution. I feel that I had a responsibility to do that. Well, here's the thing. There are going to be people out there who are going to say, well, yeah, this person shouldn't have complained and done this. Now look what she caused. No, she's simply pointing out the obvious, that the Constitution says to qualify to sit on our bench, you must meet these qualifications. And someone was nominated who did not qualify. You can't nominate her and go, oh, we're going to put her in anyways. It's close enough. So this time, instead of 10 years, it's 9 years and 9 months. Next time, it's 9 years and 2 months. Hey, next time it's 8 years and something. Hey, 7 years and change. You can't do that, okay? And so there are situations where statutes say things like, if it's reasonable, okay? If it's reasonable, this happens. What's reasonable? We understand there's wiggle room there. What you think is reasonable, what I think is reasonable, we might differ. But we're going to be close, right? Close, you'd think. And, of course, very few things in life are that certain, but the interesting thing is where you can apply numbers to something, okay? Objectively apply numbers to something. How many fingers am I holding up right now? If you can see 1, 2, and 3, I think we'll all agree on that's 3, okay? Did I have a lot of fingers up? Depends what a lot means, right? So if the law says that you must be admitted to the bar 10 years before you can be nominated to sit in the Supreme Court, 10 years is 10 years. That's not that hard to figure out. Now, we could get into, I suppose, arguments on does that mean, 365 days must pass and then the next day becomes the first day of the second year? But interestingly enough, Most states even have statutes that describe how to calculate time. I'm not making this up. And in fact, the Michigan court rules have in them how to calculate time. And it'll actually say, if this rule says you have 7 days to do something, here's what 7 days is, and here's how you count them. Because they don't want these arguments. But again, it's very, very clear that 10 years is 10 years. 9 years, 6 months ain't 10 years. It's close. It's close, but it's not 10 years. Now, some people are going to say, but Steve, why couldn't they just simply wait this one out? Because it looks like she's just a couple weeks short. Well, apparently there was a time frame within which the nomination had to be made also. And so the fact that someone got nominated before they had the 10 years screwed that up. And apparently, so the nomination has got to occur, and apparently it's going to have to occur before that time would run. That's her problem. But the interesting thing is that there are people out there who refuse to believe that there's bright lines on anything. And this just reminds me, and I apologize. I know some people think that anytime I point this stuff out, I'm being defensive. I'm not. I had someone complain the other day because I did a video on confessions of judgment a while back. And that's where if someone lends you money to assure that you'll pay it back, you sign a thing saying, if I don't pay you back, you can convert this into a judgment and get a judgment against me. It's a confession of judgment. Some states are not even legal, but they're a common thing that some aggressive lenders use. And I'm using the term aggressive as a euphemism. And confession of judgment. And the title of the video says confession of judgment. And I spelled judgment Judgment, judgment. And that's the correct spelling for the word judgment. And now you can find it spelled in places with another E, Judgment, judgment. And the interesting thing is that in the legal setting, judgment is almost always spelled with only the one E, Judgment. There is no middle E. And I remember, I'm not making this up, the second or third day of law school, a professor was writing the word judgment on the chalkboard. And he goes, by the way, he spelled it without the middle E. He goes, there's only one E in judgment. And I remember at the time going, really? Because I think I've seen it spelled both ways. And that's the point. It can be spelled both ways. But in the legal setting, it's almost always without the middle E. And I can give you examples. I can give you dozens of examples. I won't because it's not that interesting to most of you. But in Michigan, the Supreme Court has what they call the SCAO forms, the Supreme Court approved orders. So if you want to submit a judgment to a court that they're not going to scrutinize too closely, you can get a blank form that the Supreme Court has approved, fill in the blanks, and submit it to the court. The court will just glance at it. But if you submit a judgment that you've drafted from scratch, they got to sit there and read it, make sure it's got all the elements in it. So the SCAO form has all the elements in it correctly, and all you do is fill in the blanks. So most people like to use the SCAO forms if they can. And so if you get the SCAO form for a judgment or anything involving the judgment, a judgment, or the word judgment, it's spelled Judgment. So a couple days ago, I spot a comment underneath one of the videos, and somebody just wrote judgment, Judgment, question mark, which isn't really a question, although you put a question mark after a word, it's not a question. So I wrote, what's your question? A couple days goes by, and they go, you misspelled the word in your title. And I said, no, I didn't. And they go, yes, you did. It's spelled with an E inside there as well as the E with an MENT. Now, here's the thing. All you gotta do is pull out a dictionary. Or if you're sitting in front of a computer, which you are if you're watching YouTube, search the word on Google or some such. Now, again, I'm not saying that Black's Law Dictionary is the be-all and end-all of everything, but I'm simply going to point out that the word judgment is in fact spelled Judgment. What do you see with the word with an E? It says see that, but by doing it this way, they're indicating this is the preferred spelling. Judgment, that's the preferred spelling. So after this person told me that, no, I did look it up, you spelled it wrong. I know they didn't look it up. Because if you look it up, you'll discover that the word judgment has been spelled both ways over time. The old spelling from France, I believe, where we borrowed it from, had the two E's. But the modern spelling, especially in legal settings, does not have the interior E before the one after the M. So, yeah, the law can be like that, nitpicky and whatnot. But some people complain that lawyers are nitpicky. Can you imagine? I'm now going to tell you something I've never told you before. When I was in 4th grade, I won the school spelling bee. When I was in 5th grade, I won it again. I'm just throwing it out there to let you know what kind of child I was. I was the kind of child who looked that up and go, wait, you left the E out, or you put the E in. What's going on? I would have looked that up. That would have bothered me until I looked it up. But we didn't have the internet back then. We had books, but no internet. So there you go. Nathan, thanks for the story. Questions or comments, put them below. Others, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. You are very subtle. That's a polite way of avoiding the word sneaky.